Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, if you're into ROM hacking and patching and modding and fan translations and all of that stuff, this might be extremely exciting for you if you're on Android. Delta Patcher Android has just released, and this is a fork of Delta Patcher, the non-Android version. So as the name implies, it means subscribe to Mr. Sujano, and it works with XDelta files. Now, the time of filming, pre-release version 0.1 alpha is the latest update. Note that it says pre-release and alpha, so it may not be perfect and there's probably going to be bugs and issues with it. As for the initial features of this release, Delta Patcher Android has the ability to create XDelta patches, the ability to patch ROMs with XDelta patches, the ability to have a custom output ROM file name, detailed log output, the ability to leave the app in the background while it's patching, and that one is huge and we'll get to that in just a second, and non-customizable yet material U theme and a modern design. And since this is an alpha, it may be missing a few settings here, maybe more than this list, but it is missing XDelta settings and theme settings. And this is what I mean when the ability to run this app in the background is huge, because they say here, patching large ROMs may take a long time due to Android storage API limitations. And the fact that this can run in the background is probably extremely convenient. If you are interested in Delta Patcher Android and wanted to learn more about it, like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom. I don't hide my sources. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with the very popular Sudachi. And this news may come as a surprise to some and not as a surprise to others. At this point in time, Sudachi is dead. And it says it right here on their website. Sudachi is no longer in development and won't be for some time due to my required commitment to my paid project, Folium. So at the time of filming, the latest and possible last release of Sudachi is July 2nd, 2025. And they do say here, for a fork that also provides real significant changes, check out Eden. I'm not going to lie here, I am curious to hear your thoughts on the matter, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below about Sudachi. What do you think about it ending? And what do you think about it recommending Eden? And speaking about updates and still talking about Nintendo emulation, but going back one generation and talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Azahar. And Azahar just got a brand new update. Now, in a previous video, we talked about Azahar 2123, which was a pretty big release. And at the time of filming, they've just released 2123.1. And they say here, this release fixes a critical bug which affects all releases of Azahar, from its initial 2120 release up to 2123. Users of any version of Azahar prior to 2123.1 are advised to update as soon as possible. If you were wondering what exactly that bug was, fortunately they did outline it. They say fixed a bug introduced in Azahar 2120, where if an attempted installation of a .cia file failed, the save data of the associated game would be deleted. The logic flaw which allowed this to happen had been present in Citra for many years, but it was only able to start causing damage due to a seemingly innocuous adjustment which was made in Azahar's initial release. And speaking about releases, next up we're switching from Nintendo to Sony and talking about PlayStation 3 emulation on Android with APS3e. And APS3e just got a brand new update. It's worth mentioning and worth pointing out that APS3e is available over on Google Play and should automatically get updated over there. But if you're looking for the standalone APK, it is up on GitHub here, and at the time of filming, version 1.30 is the latest update. And speaking about updates, next up we're talking about Game Boy Color emulation with CoffeeGB. CoffeeGB is a Game Boy Color emulator written in Java. And it's meant to be a development exercise, but at the same time here, CoffeeGB just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, CoffeeGB version 1.5.3 is the latest update, and they say this one comes with SGB colors, where SGB stands for Super Game Boy or something else, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Anyways, here, I think this one's pretty exciting given the fact that it's now got Super Game Boy colors overall. If you're interested in this one and wanted to learn more about it, check out the GitHub. And again, like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom. And speaking about pretty interesting stuff and acronyms that use the letters GB, next up here we're talking about GB Basic, which version 1.1 is now released. And GB does not stand for Game Boy in this instance. It stands for Game Builder, but it is associated with Game Boy. And also something else, again, I can't quite put my finger on it. Taking a look over on GitHub, and they say Game Builder Basic, GB Basic, is a retro fantasy console that generates ROMs compatible with a popular handheld gaming console. It has everything ready to use for writing code, making assets, compiling projects, running with the built-in emulator, exporting to runnable ROM, etc. And I think this could be very exciting and very interesting for homebrew developers. Additionally here, and this might surprise you, GB Basic is also available right on Steam, and it's available in early access, and the price of it is 100% free. They do have a developer bundle, which does support the developer. And it's worth noting here, and I would say this is pretty big, the developer bundle is priced around $20 overall. And they say here it's a downloadable extension for Game Builder Basic that enables developers to package their GB Basic projects as native desktop applications for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS systems. This toolchain bridges the gap between retro console development and modern desktop platforms while preserving the original gameplay experience. Overall, I think this project is very exciting. And continuing to talk about arguably exciting stuff, next up we're talking about STMS or NSMB Mario vs. Luigi Online. And this one also got a brand new update. For those who may be unaware, this is a Unity standalone 2 to 10 player remake of the Mario vs. Luigi game mode from New Super Mario Bros. DS download game. So at the time of filming, version 2.0.4.0 is the latest update, and there seem to be a whole bunch of adjustments on this one and fixes. Again, if you're interested and wanted to learn more about this, like everything we talk about, links are in the description below at the bottom. Next up, we're still talking about interesting stuff, and I hope the entire video is interesting. That's one of the reasons why I create videos. Anyways, we're shifting from software to hardware here and talking about the AYANEO Thor. Now, we talked about this handheld yesterday when it was revealed, and now we've got the pricing and a little bit more info on the specs. And the AYANEO Thor, when compared with the also recently revealed AYANEO Pocket DS, makes it a very, very interesting space. So the AYANEO Thor is powered by a couple of different processors. The less expensive one is the Snapdragon 865. It's got 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage for $250 overall. For $50 more, which I'd probably recommend making the investment, for $300 you get 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It's worth noting that the most expensive model here at the early bird price is $429, which will net someone 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage. At this point, if you're wondering why I think this is a very interesting release and very interesting space, you're probably not wondering that at all. But if you are, check out the AYANEO Pocket DS, which we also covered in a previous video. So the pricing on the most expensive AYANEO Thor here is sitting below the second cheapest option for the AYANEO Pocket DS. Now, the AYANEO Pocket DS is powered by the Snapdragon G3X Gen 2, which arguably is a little bit more powerful than the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Obviously, I'm looking forward to reviews on these things when they're actually released, and I'm assuming people like Retro Gamecore and TechDweeb and others will start to review these. And when they do, I'm very curious to see if anyone stacks them up against each other, the Thor versus the Pocket DS. In terms of raw performance on this, well, the Snapdragon G3X Gen 2 arguably may be better than the 8 Gen 2. At the same time, in theory versus application may be different. I mean, there's a bunch of factors that can affect performance overall. Software, hardware, cooling, firmware, all of that stuff. So I'm very curious to see these setup and their performance overall. Let me know your thoughts about these in the comments below and what seems more attractive to you. Would $250 for a Snapdragon 865 be very attractive? Would the extra $50 to get a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 be very attractive? Be mindful of drivers and turn up drivers and all of that. Also on top of that, once you get into the more expensive models here, for example, $429, would it be worth it to pay the $70 extra to jump to the Snapdragon G3X Gen 2? Again, just looking at this stuff on paper and not necessarily in actual performance because we have not seen reviews of these yet. And speaking about hardware, next up we're shifting from handhelds to, well, stuff you use with your hands and also your head. We're talking about Sony. And Sony has just revealed its brand new InZone line of products. We've got a headset, a keyboard, and a mouse. For specific and detailed information on each peripheral, Eurogamer.net does have you covered here. So the headset is the Sony InZone H9 II, which is their second-gen version of this. From my understanding here, the headset is lighter, more comfortable, sounds better, and the batteries last around 30 hours. And it does have active noise canceling. The InZone KBD H75 is their 75% layout keyboard, which is, I would say, pretty popular. I mean, I use a 75% layout as well. And a third thing they unveiled that I think a lot of people will be curious about is their gaming mouse, the InZone Mouse A. And this one will be priced around $200 overall. On a side note here, it's worth noting I've converted that from 180 euros, so that's my best guess on US dollar pricing. I could be wrong. Taking a look as well, it appears there may not be Bluetooth connectivity on this one, which is very, very interesting. That may turn off some gamers, but I would say in general, if you're competitively gaming, you're probably going to want it to be wired or at least the 2.4G dongle. Let me know your thoughts about this stuff. And speaking about wireless modes, next up we're talking about Elden Ring and handheld mode on the Switch 2. And it's being reported that Elden Ring drops to 15 frames per second in handheld mode on the Switch 2, which I would argue is not very good. Listen to this quote right on Video Games Chronicle. I can't recommend you playing Elden Ring on Switch in this state. Arguably, if that's not bad enough, take a look at this information here. The game looks really good graphically, but the game's performance is a major issue. And it's really bad, and I understand why they don't want you to see this. Now, this is coming from Nintendo Life, which arguably has a huge bias to Nintendo stuff and would probably want to say good stuff about the Switch 2 and games on the Switch 2. Could be wrong about that one. Anyways, I recommend checking out that VGC article or checking out the Nintendo Life podcast in its entirety. It's just a little over 12 minutes, and they talk about all of this stuff. They don't showcase the gameplay because I don't think they can at this point, but they have played it, and they share their experiences with it. And I would say this is not necessarily concerning for the Switch 2. I would say it's kind of expected based on the hardware overall, but that may come as a shock to some people. I mean, taking a look at the comments here, and some people are saying since Cyberpunk runs well, that this game should as well, and since it's on PS4, it should run fine on the Switch too. It seems the game still has a lot of optimization to be running smoothly on the Switch 2, and I'm curious. I'm pretty confident they're going to get it running well on the Switch 2 overall. But at this point in time, it seems there's still a lot of work left to do. And hopefully they can bring it all together and release a good version of this on the Switch 2 when it's ready. And speaking about hardware performance, next up we're talking about Valve. And this has a lot of people talking and a lot of rumors are swirling because of it. But it looks like Valve may be testing some Steam hardware. Personally here, I wouldn't be holding my breath to expect anything from Valve at this point in terms of the Valve Fremont. I might be wrong with that one. We'll have to wait and see. But taking a look at the specs of the device, and it is running Windows, which is very interesting, not SteamOS or anything like that. Maybe they're just benchmarking some random stuff here. Maybe they're benchmarking some hardware just to see where performance is at overall. Unfortunately, this is really all I've got to go on right now, so I don't exactly know what this device actually is. I don't know what it's going to turn into, if it turns into something, if it's just a prototype, or what exactly is going on here. There is a whole lot of speculation, a whole lot of noise surrounding it, but I would say just take all of this with a grain of salt at this point in time and just wait for any more leaks or anything like that before getting excited. This really could be nothing. It could be something, but it's most likely, in my opinion, nothing. I mean, it's only got 8 gigs of RAM as well. And speaking about people with a keen eye and spotting stuff, next up we're talking about AMD FSR 4, and AMD had a bit of an oopsie here. And a bit of an oopsie is, it's a bit of an understatement. I guess they accidentally posted FSR 4's source code and then tried to delete it all, but not before people saw it. Based on my understanding, the FSR code was for the Radeon 7000 series. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Very curious to see what happens moving forward on that, if people got their hands on it and if they tried to utilize it to help open source development for different things. Who knows, because technically it was open source for a little bit. Big oopsie, but at the same time they released the source code. And speaking about oopsies, next up we're talking about PayPal. Now before we get into this section, I wanted to say that this is currently just a rumor. Nothing has been confirmed at this point in time, and this could be 100% fake. It is being circled around the internet quite a bit, and that's why we're talking about it here, but don't believe this one just yet. It does seem that testing is currently underway. It is being reported, though, that buying NSFW games on itch.io may result in a ban from PayPal. So here's the supposed email someone got from PayPal for purchasing stuff over on itch.io. We're no longer offering PayPal services for this account. Sometimes we can't offer services to an account for a variety of reasons, including local laws, our policies, or the policies of our partners. Based on the information we have today, it appears that there has been activity on this account we cannot process. Now, there are a few reasons that don't necessarily pass the sniff test to me and why I think this one is 100% fake. So taking a look at that email and the situation, I mean, right now, PayPal is a hot topic over on Steam and itch.io. However, if PayPal is an option on itch.io and someone utilizes it, that's not the person's fault. The website hosted PayPal. PayPal was working. And that's the agreement between the website and PayPal. So if PayPal is up there, it should be legitimate. And the second thing here is if this is actually an email, it may not necessarily be from PayPal. It may be some sort of phishing attempt. I'd recommend checking out the actual official PayPal app or logging into PayPal through the official website and not clicking on any links in this email. It just may be purely coincidental that they made some purchases on itch.io and then received a phishing email. We're obviously going to have to wait and see what happens moving forward on this one and whether or not it's confirmed by even more people. If there are more reports about this one, then it's probably going to be true. But at this point in time, I just see a one-off here, and this one is highly suspect. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And speaking about paying for stuff, next up we're talking about Sony. And if you're a fan of the PlayStation 5, if you were planning on buying a PlayStation 5, you're probably not going to like this news here. Sony has announced a PlayStation 5 price increase in the US. So here's the official statement from Sony, and it comes into effect very quickly. They say here, similar to many global businesses, we continue to navigate a challenging economic environment. As a result, we've made the difficult decision to increase the recommended retail price for PlayStation 5 consoles in the US starting on August 21st. Based on these numbers here, it seems the overall price for the PlayStation line of consoles is going up $50. The PS5 is now going to be listed for $550 or $549.99 if you wanted to be specific. PS5 Digital Edition $499.99 and the PS5 Pro $749.99. They do say that PS5 accessories remain unchanged at this point in time. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows the rationale behind the price increase here, and I guess this is just something else that's getting more expensive in today's day and age. And speaking about age, next up we're talking about Linux, and this is really just more of a friendly heads up. If you are on Linux and you're using kernel 6.15, you're probably at end of life. It's probably worth checking to see what kernel you're on and determining whether or not it's worth upgrading to 6.16 or downgrading to 6.12 LTS, which is supported until like 2036. Just a friendly heads up if you are on 6.15. And speaking about heads ups, next up we're talking about Google. In yesterday's video, we talked about the big Google event that was happening, made by Google 2025. It occurred yesterday and unveiled a bunch of different stuff and a bunch of very interesting stuff. For full details on everything, I'd recommend checking out 9 to 5 Google here for a nice write-up on it, or you can just check on YouTube and watch the replay of the event. They unveiled a ton of Pixel 10 stuff. Very interestingly is the back of the Pixel 10 where they've got that magnet. They're calling this one the Pixel Snap, and it's apparently going to be pretty darn convenient in terms of quick charging and also attaching accessories. And also for their headsets, I don't necessarily know if they called it out in this article, but the headsets, the new Pixel Buds Pro 2 will have a gaming mode for ultra low latency. But overall, in terms of performance for the Pixel 10, it does look really nice. And on top of that, something very interesting, the regular Pixel 10, I guess, will not have a vapor chamber for cooling. I'm not going to lie, I'd be very curious to see operating temperatures under load for this and how much the vapor chamber matters. From my understanding, the Pixel 10 Pro, the Pixel 10 Pro XL, and the Pixel 10 Pro Fold all have a vapor chamber, but the Pixel 10, the standard one, doesn't. I'm curious to see if that affects performance. I would assume it does. I'm very curious to see this phone tested heavily. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.